Alrighty, here we go. This is the Travis Neville Podcast. My name is Travis Neville. It's about time for me to remind you to go buy a copy of my book. It's on Amazon. You can just Google my name, Travis Neville. It will come up. I have 2 books. Buy the second one because I make more money on it. I'm just kidding. They're both good for different reasons, but yeah, go buy a copy of my book if you're enjoying this show. It's free for you. If you're listening on, Spotify or Apple Podcasts or something like that, I do make a little bit of money from ads. I basically I get 1 cent for every 100 downloads, I think is what I make on ads, something like that. It's incredibly low. Um, anyway, yeah, go buy my book if you would. Reviving Masculinity. If you're watching me on YouTube or Rumble, here's what it looks like. Okay, I made a comment in a show a couple of weeks ago about that the U.S. was ripe for the picking, and then I recorded a show with Ray Gardner, or Graybeard Actual from TikTok. Guy was awesome. We shared a lot of ideas in common. I've posted a few of his. Actually, by the time you guys see this show, his show will be out, so you'll know who he is. Um, and we talked a little bit about the U.S. and it being on the downslide. And he said all of Western civilization, in fact. And I don't know, I haven't researched that far into it, but I can tell you about the U.S. What does that mean? What does that mean? What do we base that decision on? It isn't just an opinion. I mean, if you want to look back at, let's start here. This is the highest evolution of humans so far, like the most advanced society that the planet has ever seen. That's what you're living in right now. All the complaints you have about, all the bitching you do, I want you to think about the fact that you're able to do the bitching. Okay, that means that we've created a society where all you have to worry about is a bunch of shit you can't control, and none of it really affects you. Not really, anyway. Governmental policies, what people say on Twitter, who gives a shit, right? All of that is luxury. So again, that goes to my point that this is the most evolved society ever. Well, before us, before the U.S., we'll call it, or before modern Western civilization, what was the second most advanced? And I mean, you'd have to say Rome, right? So Rome was um, 2,000 years ago, was a super highly advanced civilization, especially for the time. They made thousands of amazing movements towards making human life easier. They did a lot of shit wrong, of course, so do we. But the aqueducts and the literature that came out of that time period, and just unbelievable stuff, right? So Rome was a super successful civilization, and then disappeared, right? Damn it, I shouldn't have touched that thing. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but the thing will start to buzz when I go to adjust it. There we go. Um, then they disappear, and so when I start to talk about how the U.S. is ripe for the picking, and Ray says that we're on the downslide, um, we have to you got to look at Rome. I mean, it's the closest parallel to what we have going. So what made Rome fall? These are things that I knew probably in high school, certainly by undergrad. But I'll just list them off for you here. I've got basically 7 different things, okay? And I'll go through them one at a time. The first thing that led to Rome falling was economic troubles. They constantly overspend. The government would spend tax money like crazy, basically on wars. They had a tremendous ego. They wanted to be the biggest, the best, the most amazing, most powerful, best human civilization that was ever created, and they were. And in order to make that bigger, to make that better, their whole goal was it's just straight up megalomania, like Hitler. They've tried to take over the whole world. So constantly starting wars to try to gain new territory, gain new resources, gain new prestige. And the cost of those wars meant that the taxes to Romans were ridiculously high. And they got so high at some point that the real wealthy Romans started bouncing out to the fucking Netherlands, basically, and starting up their own little fiefdoms, and staying the fuck away from Rome, or as far out as they could. And so all that tax money went away. So that was the economic issue, right? So we spent all this money and we can't recoup it from our citizens, so we're basically bankrupt. Um, and people just didn't want to pay for all that expensive ass shit. So how does that equate to the U.S.? Well, I mean, I heard one statistic that like 60% or something, or 80% of the American currency currently in circulation was printed in the last 2 years. There's no doubt that our government has spent its fucking ass off through the debacle that was the baloney virus. Okay. Um, Giving people money to stay home, paying for your mortgage payment if you don't want to pay it, paying for your rent if you can't pay it, um, paying employers to keep paying their people even though their people weren't working. The price tag for that, we won't know for years, but it was ridiculously high. Okay. Ridiculously high. Yeah, so we are the most financially successful country in the world. You don't stay that way, spending money like that. Ask anybody who's got anything. If you've got, even if you have a lot of money, you can't spend it like you have a lot, because then pretty soon you won't have any. And that's definitely happening with our current administration over the last 2 years. The overspending is astronomical. And holy shit, what's the next thing that happens? Well, two things happen. Number one, inflation goes out of control. I mean, gas prices have tripled since the election 2 years ago in 2020. Um, they're starting to level out. Holy shit, it's midterms. Fucking the prices are going down a little bit. I don't want to get into the politics part of it too much, but know that you spend way too much money, you're fucked. You're gonna be in a jam, and that's exactly what our country has done, and that's what they're doing. And then the second step that happens after that, they're like, holy shit, we spent all this money. We got to get taxes raised. So they hire a whole shit ton of armed IRS agents, right? That's their response. Like, we're gonna blow a bunch of money. Oh fuck, we got to get that back. So we're gonna get these people out there to take it from you, essentially. And what are you gonna do? Well, I'll tell you what I did. Um, I just a couple of months ago sold my house that was in a population center for sure, and made a bunch of money because of inflation. The prices were super high. Made a bunch of money on it. I was able to pay cash for some property out in a very rural area with incredibly low taxes, and I'm building a house for myself right now. So there goes my tax money. I'm just one guy. I'm not the only one who's going to be going out to the nether regions to avoid taxes, because that's going to keep getting worse. So that's the first reason why Rome fell. They had economic problems, and it stemmed with how they handled their taxes. The second thing um, was overexpansion in military. Really, it still deals with overspending, but overexpansion militarily meant it costs too much to gain that land, and then now you have to protect it. Now you have to be able to govern it. Now you have to be able to tax the people who live there and put in infrastructure and all the different things that happen when you are something is part of your country. Long story short, their empire it grew too large to defend. It was too damn big, so they couldn't defend all of it. Much like how the city of Detroit is so spread out and so big, they can't get you can't get infrastructure to all of it. So that's why if you live in certain neighborhoods of Detroit, I mean, think about the cost from the city. You might have 6 square blocks of area that all has sewers, it all has water going to it, it all has electric going to it. It's all got sidewalks, all the roads need to be plowed. Maybe there's only 4 houses total out there. So as a city, you can't take care of it. Like your area is too big for the amount of people that you have, right? So that's what was happening in Rome. It was too big to defend. So then your outer regions become kind of a no man's land. Okay, officially it's Rome, but really anybody can come and take it if they want it. You know what I mean? Because there's really nobody there to defend it. Start looking into an incident that happened between China and India on the border in an area where handguns and any kind of weapons were not allowed because it was a volatile area. Look into that, Google that. Um, that's what'll happen. So, well, how does that relate to us in the U.S. right now? Well, I mean, look at any map. Other than China, our country's huge. I mean, I think Russia might be bigger than we are area-wise. But we've got super easy access to both coasts. It's fucking water. It might as well be a highway from other countries to us. And was the Canadian Army going to stop people from coming in from the north? No. The southern border is completely wide open at this point. You can just walk across it, no problem. Come on in. I would say that that's one of the two main things that make a country a country. It's a shared set of values, one, and some borders is the second thing. We don't have that going. So we've got a giant area to defend. Okay, and again, all of this that I'm talking about, the ways that I'm comparing the U.S. to Rome, I'm just letting you know that the conditions are ripe. Like we are set to be overtaken, or I mean, there's another way that this goes, and that would be civil war, and I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, as far as us being taken over, we've got a lot of things that are hurting us right now. We've already overspent like crazy. Our area is very large and hard to defend, right? Third thing, governmental corruption and political instability. What was happening in Rome? Well, towards the tail end, when they were in a downslide like we are now, uh, they had more than 20 leaders over a 75-year span. So let's do the math. That's one every 4 years, roughly, right? Well, I would I would bet I would bet you $1,000 that we won't see a two-term president for the next 20 years, maybe longer, because we have such a divided country, and I'll talk about that more in a second. That's what's going to happen. So that's what happened in Rome. Over 20 years, they had, over 75 years, they had 20 leaders. So basically, a new ruler every less than 4 years, right? Civic pride was at its lowest. In other words, people's pride in the country and people's trust for their leadership was just in the basement, too. I mean, nobody trusted who was leading them. There was no confidence in their government. And when a people does, I think that there's a healthy amount of distrust for government. I think that if you uh, aren't distrustful of your government, you're wrong. Um, at some level, there needs to be checks and balances. And our founding fathers knew that. And that's why they put in the checks and balances that we have. I think for the most part, having at least a two-party system means that things are going to get bounced around. I've heard it said this way: if you leave Republicans in office too long, they will wreck the environment. But if you leave Democrats in office too long, they'll wreck the economy. And we're certainly seeing the latter happening right now. Um, and having those bounce back and forth usually is a good deal. It's usually a good thing. But it's you're gonna it's not good. So that was it for Rome. Governmental corruption and political instability. We certainly have the political instability right now. Nobody's going to argue that. And governments have always been corrupt. Again, like I said, if you trust them all the way, that's a problem. Like I said, our founding fathers knew that, and that's why they had the three-tiered system: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and what's the other one? Talking to me, I haven't been in a civics class in a long time. Anyway, that's why that's there. Checks and balances. That's how our government is set up. You shouldn't trust your government, not all the way. You should have some belief in them and some faith in them, but you should always be able to look inside and see them. It should always be transparent to the people, right? In a real democracy, in a real republic. Um, Another thing that, uh, and this is going to move us into item number 4, is this thing about, if you look at the last two presidents that we've had here in the U.S., both of them are unbelievably polarizing. And I think I know that's a result of having a very polarized society. Our country has never been more divided, except since the Civil War. Our country has never been more divided. Um, if you look at how people's political beliefs have changed, mostly it's a result to hating the other group, you know? And I hate saying that about this country that I love so much, but that's what's happening right now. You've got half the people believe one way, half the people believe the other way, and that's not good. That's division. And now we have a president who just stood up in front of everybody and said that the biggest threat to our country was the other side. He called Re- MAGA Republicans the biggest threat to the republic. They're other Americans, you fucking asshole. Like, what kind of fucking leadership is that? Like, you're gonna turn Americans against other Americans, you fucking idiot. That's not how leaders work. What are you doing, you fuckhead? You gotta get rid of this petty fucking political bullshit and realize you're running a whole country here. 331 million people, and it's a damn good country. You can't turn one half against the other half. What the fuck is wrong with you, you idiot? That kind of shit leads to greater division. It pisses off one side and it emboldens the other side to just create more division, right? So that's part of the governmental corruption. They're only interested in maintaining themselves. They're only maintaining interested in getting the votes. And that brings us into item number 4 that split up Rome. And that was the rise of what they called the Eastern Empire. Like I said, it got so big that they had to divide the country into two halves. Byzantium was on the west side, and Constantinople, I never say that right, was on the east side. They're kind of the two, um, like, capitals of the two areas. They really didn't like each other that much. They had to compete for tax revenues, other resources, military aid, stuff like that. And, now you got two countries essentially instead of one. You can't be doing shit to separate your country. You got to do things to bring people together. I mean, that's the point. Shit. That's why I run this fucking podcast. I'm trying to help men be better at being men so that they can be better in their relationships and better for their children, better at work, better for their friends. To bring people together for other people, right? We're trying to get people to come together. We're trying to dispel uh, bullshit stereotypes and heal and bond, right? That's the point of this whole show. That's the point of the book. That's why I wrote Reviving Masculinity, to help these young men who didn't have a father figure growing up, didn't have a full-time father in the home, how to be a man. It's going to make their lives better. It's very simple. So that's what happened in Rome. They kind of divided into two halves. And if you think we're not in two halves right now in our country, you're fucking crazy. We're square in the middle of it. You know what I mean? And like I said, we've got a current president who's fanning the flames of division. And it's not good. And I think that really what's going on here in our country is this: 50% of the population is looking at the other 50% going, um, thinking that they all think like the most extreme members of that other 50%. You know what I mean? Like the craziest, loudest, dumbest motherfuckers on the internet. That's who they think all of the other half is. And the opposite's true. The other half is looking at the first half the same way. They think that everybody who votes Republican was there on January 6th and loves Trump, you know? And the Republicans all think that, every Democrat's got purple hair and is all into Black Lives Matter and doesn't go to work and doesn't have a job and riots and protests all the time. And that's just not the fact of it. I mean, 98% of us aren't in either one of those extremes, right? We're just fucking Americans, man. And that's one of the great things about this place. Without fucking putting the national anthem behind me. um, that was supposed to be the point of this country, right? The great melting pot. Doesn't matter what you think, you're welcome here. Your beliefs are valued. Doesn't matter how you want to have a religion. That doesn't matter how you want to live, how you want to think. It's okay here. This is a place where you can do that. And now everybody's turning on each other for exactly that. It's the most ironic bullshit ever. It's very un-American, I would tell you. So that was the fourth thing that led to Rome falling, was the rise of the Eastern Empire, we'll call it. So it was basically the West was Rome in the main area, and then they kind of created this other little minor country, and they grew and got bigger and bigger and bigger. And, eventually that was not good. Let's see, governmental corruption and political instability. Here's a big one: weakening of the military. Okay, there's a reason why Rome fell. Okay, they had the strongest military in the history of humans, and then they weakened. How did they get weaker? Well, went like this. So eventually, Romans themselves found themselves to be too good to be in the army. They were too entitled to feel like they needed to burden themselves with protecting the country. And a lot of Romans just believed that the country didn't need protecting. We're so big, we're so strong. I've never known war in my lifetime, so what am I worried? It's never going to happen again. War is a thing of the past. So a lot of them thought that way. And so the military got smaller, and the people who were in the military ended up being mercenaries, Mongols, barbarians. That's the military became mostly these people, and Rome was paying them to be there. So they had a paid military, instead of a military volunteers. And everybody knows that if you get paid to do a thing, there's no way you have as much fire for it as if you truly love it. Like you get paid to go to work, and you do a great job at work, I'm sure. You don't get paid to be a dad, but I bet you bust your ass as a dad, and you put way more effort into that. You don't take days off of parenting so that you can go to work, I hope. You take days off work to go be a parent. So money doesn't make you loyal, is what I'm saying. And that's what was happening in Rome. So you had all these soldiers who were paid to be there, and they kind of didn't give a fuck what they were fighting for. They're just there for their money. You know what I mean? Um, Obviously, you can see where they're not going to fight that hard. Like, I'm not going to risk my life for this shit. And again, that attitude of entitlement, I shouldn't have to do this. War isn't a thing we need to worry about. We're so big, we're strong, we're the most powerful, society that ever lived. And how many of you guys think that here about the U.S., right? Um, and another, so that's one attitude about it. And then, of course, how does that how does that impact us, right? Well, our military has been becoming weaker and weaker for the past 30 years. I can remember when I was in college, Bill Clinton shutting down a bunch of, and I didn't think he was doing a bad thing, but he closed down a bunch of military bases. One of them happened to be right by the college that I went to, so I remember when that happened. It would have been the late 90s, I think. And since then the military's gotten smaller and smaller, and shit, we can't even, at this point, a lot of the standards are getting lowered so that women can do them in the name of equality. And when you lower standards, you lower standards. I mean, you get weaker. That's what happens. You got a man thinking he's a woman as an admiral at this point. I heard a quote the other day of it was an Air Force pilot, and he was talking about how the military needed to hire fewer white men. He was a white guy himself. He said we all think the same, and like that's just fucking crazy. They're doing things that weaken the military in the name of so that they won't hurt anybody's feelings. It's fucking war, asshole. You're gonna hurt more than feelings. That's how it works. That's how military works. So yeah, the military in Rome weakened. So of course they were ripe for the picking at that point. How many is that? Is that six? No, here, well, this is number six, I think. Yeah. Um, Loss of traditional values is a reason why Rome fell. Um, what does that mean? Well, in Rome, they were polytheistic forever. They Greek gods, but think Greek gods like that, where there's a whole bunch of them for different things. They were polytheistic. And, at some point in the 300s, I think, Christianity started to become more popular, which is monotheism. So it isn't the fact that one is better or worse than the other. It's the fact that their traditional, what they were founded on values were going away or changing. That's the thing to focus on. It is. I'm not saying Christianity's bad. I'm not saying polytheism is bad. You guys know I'm not into any of that stuff. But yeah, so that's what happened. What it did is essentially it eroded the traditional values of the whole populace. There were no binding morals, in other words, like, you know, there was Christianity, whatever it is. You got to have a thing that binds you all together as a group, right? And it isn't just where you live. You got to have some shared beliefs. Otherwise, you won't fight for each other. You won't believe in your country. You won't, right? There's got to be something that glues you together. And that's what, as a coach, we always focus on that. Hey, man, we're all wearing the same colors. We're all wearing the same uniforms. We all live in the same town, you know, play for the same team, you know, unity, bonding, solidarity, right? And those morals are more important than anything else. And when those change, that becomes a problem. And I would tell you that Christianity in our country is just has been on the downslide for 100 years. I would tell you that the left in our country has become the new religion because it is a religion, for lack of a better term. I mean, people are believing in a bunch of shit that they can't see. They are believing in a world that they're believing in should other than what is. I mean, I can go into that. I can do a whole nother show on that. And I'm not really picking sides here, but I'm telling you that our morals have changed, and that makes you open. That makes you vulnerable. Think about this. The demise of the American family. Just think about TV over the last 40 years, we'll say. You went from having strong, well-bonded families as being the core to, well, that's not that big of a deal anymore. You've let your government tell you as women that it's more important to be loyal to a boss who pays you than it is to be loyal to your husband who is going to love you for the rest of your life, give you children, put a roof over your head, etc. Um, that's a problem. when you start to break up the family, your whole country disappears. When you think about it, everything comes down to that. Every single American that we have was raised, right, at some point. And that's how you learn your set of values. That's how you learn your set of morals. That's how you learn what's right and wrong. You're taught that by your parents. And when that doesn't happen, when you don't have two strong parents there, or invariably, even if you did, like shit, I grew up with two great parents, but I spent all my formative educational years being raised essentially by the state, going to a public school. It's funded by state tax dollars, which come from financial or from federal tax dollars, a lot of them. Uh, you're being raised by the state. That's what it is. They hire a person to come in and raise you. And we've talked about this. Who's going to do a better job? The person who's paid or the person who's doing it because they love it, right? And I'm not going to, that's a whole nother show too, talking about public education. Uh, but just know that the traditional values of our country, which were family, right? Um, they're disappearing. I mean, 80% of, no, 40%, sorry. 40% of children born today are going to be born to a single parent household. 40%, 4 out of 10, you know? And of those 40%, 80% of them are raised only by women with no strong father in the home, no father in the home whatsoever. So they're only getting one half, and mom's overburdened. She's now thinks that she has to work too and have a career as well as be a parent and trying to do both of them just as well and can't, I'm sure. Most can't. It's fucking hard, not as well as you could do just one of them. But I don't think there's any argument that our traditional values in the U.S. are gone. In fact, there are some circles where me saying the phrase traditional values is offensive. I mean, it's ridiculous. Um, so that's the seventh. No, it's the sixth thing. Okay, so let's go through them. Economic troubles, um, overexpansion. The country was too big. Governmental corruption and political instability. Um, the rise of the Eastern Empire, in other words, having it be two halves. Uh, weakening of the military and loss of traditional values. All those things have happened so far. I'm not skipping anything. I mean, here is the big one. The one that, when you look up why did Rome fall, they're going to tell you invasion by Mongol hordes, Huns, whatever, barbarians, we'll call them. Savage, unpolished, uh, hardworking, badass motherfuckers came in and just took over, essentially. And that's why Rome fell. But it's about the conditions that led to that, right? And I just laid out all those conditions. These are all the things that were happening in the world, and it allowed that invasion to happen. Okay. Now, before that, where I pulled all this information, I kept double checking it at different sites that were .org and .edu, not .com. They talk about the arrival of the Huns nearby. In other words, this horde of bad guys started living very near the border of Rome. And again, because they were so weak on the edges, they couldn't stop them from coming in. Well, that's about the only thing that hasn't happened yet. Okay? When we look at the parallels between the US falling and how Rome fell, that's the only thing that hasn't happened. I'm giving you an 8-point list. I just listed off the seventh one, and that's that the bad guys got close to us, physically got near them, started living or you know, populating near Rome. And then the last move was that they actually came in and invaded. Let's go back to the arrival of the Huns nearby. We do have it pretty good here as far as that goes. In the U.S., we have what's called the Monroe Doctrine. That's a thing that was written earlier, but Teddy Roosevelt executed it, stretched it, made it a little bit stronger in, 1903, I think, or something like that, very early, so about 120 years ago, and said that anybody who does anything, anybody from the Eastern Hemisphere, Europe, Africa, India, Asia, anybody who comes over to the Western Hemisphere and fucks with anybody over here, it doesn't matter if it's Costa Rica or Panama, we as Americans are going to take it as a personal threat to our mothers, and we're going to fuck you up. So from then on, that was the end of the um, the colonization era. The colonists stopped. Like all the European influences that created basically Western civilization over here in the West, they quit fucking with us at that point. So we've got that going for us, okay? We've got a loose union of all the countries that are here in the West. We also have regional separation. Like I told you, we don't have any of these potential bad guy countries that live right next to us. Closest thing we have to that is uh, is Russia being just across the Aleutian Islands from Alaska, right? So if Russians were going to come in, that's how they'd come. Everybody knows it, right? And again, water, that's an awful lot of coastline on both sides to defend, right? So nobody has moved right in here, but I think that because of technology, they don't have to, right? But let's think about this. Think about Russia, right? What they just do? Well, they took over Ukraine. Well, why would they do a thing like that? Oh, Putin's a bad guy. Well, think it through, okay? Look at the map. Ukraine is right on the border of Russia, and what's on the other side of Ukraine is a NATO country, a democratic country who's basically on our side. So why in the world would Russia ever, and again, Russia's not so stupid that they delete history so that they can let it repeat itself. He knows that. He knows that's how Rome fell. Putin knows that the Huns got right to their border and then they were able to attack. So he needs a buffer state. He needs a country that's between him and what he considers the bad guys. That's why he took over Ukraine. That's all. I mean, it's pretty fucking simple. That's all it was. He knows that. He needed a buffer, so he went after Ukraine. And make no mistake about it, if this administration doesn't absolutely shit down their legs in Afghanistan, he'd have never gone after Ukraine. Because that situation was there from the beginning. Ukraine was threatening to go NATO. They were talking about going democracy and all this different stuff. They've been doing that forever. But Putin didn't do it while Trump was in office. He didn't do it while Obama was in office because neither one of those guys came off as soft or a pushover or a pussy. But these guys, he's like, oh fuck, look what he just did in Afghanistan. Did you see that? This is Putin thinking about it. He left all of his shit there for these guys who fucking hate him? This guy's a fucking pussy. I can do whatever I want to. Yeah, let's take Ukraine. Because he's not doing it. He's just gonna shame us on social media, which is about all that's happened, you know? Blame the fucking rising gas prices on Russia, which is not the fucking fact. Look at what gas prices have done since the election. It wasn't since Ukraine, it was since the election. As soon as he came into office, they started rising. Fucking crazy. Like I said, I don't want to get into the politics of this, but this topic specifically is political. You know, fall of Western society, the fall of Western civilization. We are the leader of the free world is our president. We go down, he goes down, a lot of fucking things change around the whole world. Make no mistake about it. And as I told you, it's about conditions. And the conditions right now are exactly the way they were when Rome fell. Okay. So that's why Ray and I were talking about how, the US is on the downslide. And that's why I said that the US is ripe for the picking. And don't think I'm the only one who sees this. Every leader in the world pays attention to history, except for our leaders and that dipshit in Canada. They delete history and try to act like it didn't happen because they're ashamed of some shit that they didn't even do. There's some people who aren't even alive anymore, right? I don't know. That's the situation. That's why I said it. You should be at least loosely paying attention to the world around you. As I've told you, I've talked about this before, rights versus responsibilities. Yeah, on paper, you have a bunch of rights given to you by a government that I just outlined could easily fall at any time. So quit fucking worrying about your rights and start working on your responsibilities. What are the things you need to do to have yourself prepared for a situation like this? I'm not saying everybody's got to be a doomsday prepper. I'm not saying that. But, thinking it through, looking at what you would do, do you have a plan? Do you have a bug out bag? Or do you have, what I mean? There's some things you can put into place that will, at the very least, give you some peace of mind in this situation. Because, like I told you, we are fucking ripe right now. I mean, it isn't a thing I hope's going to happen. I hope it never happens. I love this country. I hope nothing ever gets fucked up about it. And by the way, make no mistake, the reason that it hasn't happened is because there's a gun behind every blade of grass. I've talked about that before too. Look up that admiral from Japan right after Pearl Harbor who said that about the U.S., about the contiguous U.S. Anyway, that's the situation. Focus on your responsibilities. Be a good man for your partner, be a good man for your children, be a good man at work, because you're a leader all the time. Don't forget it. My name is Travis Neville. This is the Travis Neville Podcast. I hope that in some way today's show helped you to get your shit together. Have a great week.